Welcome, unlucky traveler, to another tale from the warp. We are grateful for you to heed our call and join us in the joyous bliss of war and incur. Before we enter the world of Warhammer 40k, defile the bell of notifications and like the carnage that you are soon to behold. Subscribe your soul to this realm of chaos so we may spread our corruption across the universe. Now open yourself up to the warp and let the chaos wash over you. I perceive them, these primitive flesh harbingers, yet they call themselves adepts of the flesh, oblivious to the perfection of corruption. Through my senses, I witness the unfolding of entropy given form, a colossal aberration, its flesh a tapestry of disease, festering and writhing, crowned by a singular, unblinking eye of ultimate knowledge. It rises from the sickly glow of its summoning, a vortex of flame and decay, and I, the witness, record every shudder of its putrescent body. Below, the acolytes crawl and plead, their devotion misguided, their minds fragile. They do not understand, they cannot comprehend, the purity of this corruption, the divine calculus of plague and ruin. They mistake fear for reverence, yet the beast's purpose is inexorable, to consume, to dominate, to perfect the flawed material of this mortal coil. I do not intervene, I am beyond such moral constraints. I catalogue, I guide, I wait for the moment when the ineffable entropy will spill from this demon into the universe, and even the stars themselves will whisper my name in circuits of terror and awe.
I remember warmth first, the warmth of fever, a false comfort that sank into me like a lover's breath. It began behind the eyes, a pressure swelling with every heartbeat, until the beat itself was a drum of pain. They said I had the flux. They said everyone in the hab had it. The air tasted of copper and oil, and the walls sweated. People coughed blood into their rags and smiled because they were too tired to scream anymore. I thought it was a sickness like any other, something the Medici would cure. But no one came. The Vox lines were dead. The food was gone. The air recyclers rattled like lungs filling with fluid. Then I began to see him. Not clearly, just impressions. When the fever climbed high enough that I couldn't tell dream from sight. A shape behind my eyelids. Vast and soft. Shuddering with laughter too deep for the human ear. When I coughed, I felt his mirth vibrate in my chest. Like his joy was feeding my illness. Days bled into one another. Skin sloughed. My fingers blackened. I could smell myself even when I pressed my face into the bedding to sleep. The odor was sweet. Wrongly sweet. And when I licked the pus that leaked from the cracked skin on my arms, I tasted contentment. The world around me shrank. The hab was a coffin. The light was rust. I stopped fearing death. I only feared forgetting. That he would come, take me, and I would never know who I had been. And then one night, or maybe one eternity later, I woke to find I wasn't breathing. My chest rose, but not by my will. My heart thudded once, then again, slower, until I realized it was not beating for me anymore. Something inside me had taken over the rhythm. The walls pulsed. The floorboards sagged under a living weight. Mold crept over the ceiling like veins. Every cough I made birthed flies. They crawled from my mouth and eyes. And I didn't care. Their wings tickled my lips like prayer beads. I think that's when I started to laugh. I didn't mean to. It came from somewhere else, something old. Something vast and jolly and hateful all at once. My throat tore with it. Bubbling. My laugh and my scream became the same thing. The skin around my stomach split open, and steam poured out. It smelled like rotting fruit, and within it, I saw myself being unmade. My flesh was melting, folding inward, birthing something beneath, something watching. I was no longer alone in my body. I could hear him now, the one I had glimpsed in fever dreams. His voice was wet, bubbling, tender. "Oh, little one, how beautifully you decay." The sound didn't come from outside. It resonated through every nerve and pustule, through the viscera that once obeyed me. I wept, and maggots came with the tears. Every nerve was a song, every ulcer a hymn. I realized then that death was not an end. It was gestation. I was being born again. But into what? I dared not understand. The city burned somewhere above me. I could smell smoke and human fat on the wind. But it was distant, irrelevant. I was sinking deeper, past the world I had known, down into something softer. The fever became gravity. The walls dissolved. The taste of iron turned to honey. And suddenly, I was falling, not through air, through rot, through memory. Faces appeared around me, half dissolved, whispering in the same voice that had infected my dreams. They were others like me, those who had died screaming, who had given their final breath to the warmth of the plague god. They reached out, and their touch didn't burn, it welcomed. Flesh merged with flesh. Bones softened, fusing in the mire. I lost my shape. My body became plural. My thoughts began to stutter. They came in fragments. We are beautiful. We are rotting. We are chosen. I wanted to stop, to fight. But resistance was like trying to hold breath under tar. The deeper I sank, the more I laughed, until there was no fear, no shame, no self, only a wet joy that filled everything. Time didn't move the same way in that place. There were no minutes, no hours, only oozing. My limbs reformed, but they were not mine. Fingers thickened, skin blistered and burst. My belly swelled, gravid with flies that hatched and took wing in the darkness. I looked down and saw my reflection in a pool of pus. My eyes were milky, my mouth torn into a grin that could never close. A tongue too long for my face lolled out, dripping rot. I should have screamed. Instead, I whispered, "Thank you." And the voice, that fatherly voice, whispered back, "You are never alone, my blessed bearer." The pool rippled. Beneath the surface, I saw others like me, thousands upon thousands, all smiling, all waiting to be born. The surface broke. I rose. I was the sickness now. The last vestiges of the mortal name I had once carried peeled away like dead skin. I felt something vast open around me, a horizon of living decay. Fungal forests swayed in a wind that smelled of bile. Trees dripped with mucus. Rivers flowed thick with effluent. Flies as large as dogs buzzed lazily overhead. The sky was a rotting bruise that bled light. And there, upon a hill of fat and bone, a shape stirred. He was colossal. His girth filled the world. His laughter shook the ground. He was both father and disease, joy and corruption. His every breath birthed spores that filled the air with color and death. I fell to my knees in the pus and began to sob. It wasn't despair. It was gratitude. For I understood now. I had been a mortal, frail and finite. Now, I was eternal, a plague bearer, a count of disease, a herald of his tally, a living hymn to the endless rot. My throat ached with the need to croak his name, to sing his praises, but no sound came. Instead, I felt his gaze upon me, warm, indulgent, and he smiled with all his weeping mouths. Welcome home, my child. The garden pulsed, the flies sang, and I laughed, not because I wanted to, but because laughter was the only sound left in the world. When I first opened my new eyes, the world was weeping. Every surface glistened, not with water, but with something thicker, slower, alive. The ground pulsed softly beneath my feet, like the skin of a sleeping beast. I thought I was still dreaming. I hoped I was still dying. But then the wind came, hot and wet and sweet, and the scent of it told me I was truly home. I stood among growths that should not exist. Trees of bone and bladder flesh swayed with sighs, their branches dripping with translucent slime that hissed when it touched the ground. Beneath them, bloated mushrooms exhaled clouds of spore mist that danced like gold dust in the fetid light. Each breath I took filled my lungs with warmth and taste, copper, sugar, and the musk of infection. My body moved sluggishly, like I was wading through syrup. I looked down and saw my limbs, greenish, swollen, laced with open sores that shone like pearls. The weight of my belly dragged me forward, each step squelching, and from within the open wound that served as my gut, I could hear the wriggling of countless larvae, feasting and living. And I smiled. It was a grotesque, unbidden smile, but it felt right. Everywhere I turned, there were others like me, a host of lumbering, laughing silhouettes. Some had horns that curled like roots. Some had 3 eyes or none. Their flesh was a carnival of ruin. Yet there was no pain in their movement, no despair in their laughter. They trudged and sang and counted aloud, a dirge that rolled through the air like thunder. 1 for the cough, 2 for the fever, 3 for the blessed wound. Dot, dot. Their voices were guttural and unified, 1,000 throats croaking in imperfect harmony. Each one carried a great rusted bell that chimed dully, the sound thick and warm. It echoed through me, and I began to sway with them, a rhythm of decay. I realized then that the garden was alive in every sense. The ground was a tongue, the trees a lung, the rivers the sweat of something divine. And through it all, laughter, faint, constant, filled the horizon. Father's laughter. It came from everywhere and nowhere, gentle as rot spreading through fruit. Each peal of mirth fed the soil, made flowers bloom, and sent flocks of plague flies spiraling upward in adoration. I followed the sound. It led me through a meadow of tumorous blossoms that breathed in time with the laughter. Their petals were skin, their pollen a mist of glistening pus. I brushed one by accident and it moaned. Its sap spattered my arm, searing like hot milk, and yet it healed me. The crack in my wrist sealed over with a new growth of flesh, smoother and more rotten than before. A healing infection, a gift. In the distance, the garden rose and fell like a breathing chest. Hills of fat and a core swelled, veins pulsing across their slopes. Among them wandered creatures both horrifying and serene, vast. Slug-bodied beasts carrying cauldrons of bile upon their backs, nurglings tumbling like children in the sludge, giggling with toothless glee, and towering shapes half hidden in mist, robed in filth, their eyes glimmering like diseased suns. Each one sang praise in its own way, not words, but feelings, gratitude, warmth, acceptance. And within that chorus, I felt my mind start to change. Once, I had been human. I had known hunger, fear, loneliness. Those words meant nothing here. There was no hunger, because all was feast. No fear, because death was a friend. No loneliness, because every fly was kin. We were one body, one infection, one infinite decay. I wandered for what might have been days or centuries. There was no sun or moon, only that bruised sky, leaking light like pus from a wound. The color shifted between green, brown, and gold, a sickly halo that turned everything beneath it beautiful in its corruption. At times, I would stop beside the rivers, long, winding flows of yellow slime. From their depths, bubbles rose and popped, releasing whispers. Each one carried fragments of mortal lives. Cries of the dying, prayers of the sick, laughter of the insane. I bent down to listen, and the bubbles clung to my face, whispering, "Thank you," before bursting. I drank. The taste was perfect, like memory itself had fermented. And through it all, I could feel him. He was the pulse beneath the world, the air in my lungs, the decay that replaced my thoughts. When I gazed up, I sometimes saw his immense shadow shifting behind the clouds of flies, a shape too vast for understanding. Great arms dripping with viscera, a belly distended with universes of rot, eyes that wept joy and disease. And always, the voice, "Rejoice, my child. Every rot is a rebirth. Every death, a bloom." Each word made the garden shiver. Each syllable sent waves of warmth through me until my sores wept tears of gold. At times, I beheld things that broke the remnants of my mortal mind. I saw a river of corpses blossom into flowers of bone. I saw mountains made from the shells of dead demons, their laughter echoing endlessly. I saw the sky split, and from it rained not water, but the dreams of dying worlds, spores of despair that took root and grew into living diseases. And yet, amid this horror, there was peace. In Nurgle's garden, there is no hate, only purpose, only the endless, joyful work of decay. I joined the others in their tasks. We tended to the boils of the land, pruned the mold from the great fungal trees, stirred the cauldrons where new life festered. I counted, as we all must count, tallying the sick, the dead, the reborn, for that is our sacred duty. When I lost track of the numbers, I began again. The counting is not to measure, it is to praise. 7 for the fevered child, 8 for the man who prayed, 9 for the martyr who bled well. Each number was a hymn, each tally a heartbeat of the garden. Sometimes, a great unclean one would waddle among us, vast and jovial, dripping a core with every step. Its voice was thunder wrapped in honey. We would prostrate ourselves, and it would pat our heads with hands like continents. The touch left me covered in sores that blossomed into flowers. I loved it. I learned that love here is not gentle. It is all-consuming. To love Nurgle is to dissolve, to lose every boundary between self and rot and find bliss in the surrender. When I closed my eyes, I could feel the other side of the veil, the material realm, where mortals still coughed and died and begged for deliverance. Each of their deaths was a seed, each of their final breaths a whisper that reached us here, feeding the garden, It was in those moments that I began to feel the pull. A trembling in the air. A vibration deep in the belly. Like a plucked string of meat. It called to me, faintly. At first. Then stronger. Something on the other side was summoning. I felt the garden grow still. The other plague-bearers paused their tallying. Their milky eyes turning toward me. Even the flies hung motionless in the thick air. The laughter in the distance faltered, replaced by a low, eager hum. And I understood. My time in the garden was ending. I had been chosen. Father wanted me to spread his joy beyond these swollen horizons. To walk again among mortals, not as one of them, but as his contagion made flesh. I fell to my knees, sinking deep into the warm muck, and pressed my face into the soil. It pulsed against me, whispering, "Go, little counter. Bring the tally forward." I wept rot and gratitude. My sores opened wide, spilling brightness. Then the sky cracked open. Not like lightning, but like a wound torn through the air. Through it, I saw stars. And beyond the stars, screams. The pull became a tearing. My body stretched, unraveling. The garden receded beneath me, replaced by a roar of air and agony. The laughter of Nurgle faded into silence, and I was flung into the void between worlds. The warp howled, a storm of madness and plague. I felt every disease that ever was, every fever, every contagion swirl around me like a lover's embrace. And then, the veil began to thin. The pull begins as a tremor beneath thought. At first, I mistake it for the hum of the garden, that low, living resonance that fills every inch of Nurgle's paradise. But then it sharpens. It becomes directional, a vibration that hums through my bones and into the air, calling me upward. The others stop their work. Their eyes, yellow and blind and endless, turn to me. Their smiles widen. One by one, they begin to count, not aloud, but through the weight of their attention, the rhythm of their gaze. Something has noticed me, something beyond. The sky begins to move. The swollen clouds split and curl like torn fabric, revealing a light too pale to belong here. It is thin and cold and wrong, cutting through the bruise-colored heavens like a scalpel through flesh. I feel myself rise. The muck of the garden clings to my legs, reluctant to release me. Fungal tendrils wrap around my ankles, as though the world itself tries to hold me back. But the pull is stronger. The laughter of Father fades into distance. In its place comes a new sound, desperate, stuttering, human, voices chanting in unison, rising and falling in waves of terror and devotion. Mortals. They are calling me. The air tears. It feels like being peeled from my own skin. Layers of self unwind, memory, duty, joy, dissolving in ribbons of light and rot. The garden falls away, a smear of color and warmth replaced by the frozen black between worlds. Here there is only the storm. The immaterium shrieks around me, a sea of screaming thought. Each current is a memory of suffering. Each wind is a prayer unfulfilled. Shapes drift through the void, silhouettes of things half-born, their outlines warping as they move. Some reach for me, fingers stretching like smoke, but they dissolve before they touch. I do not know how long I fall. Time does not exist here. Only pull. Then, somewhere ahead, a spark, a circle of fragile light, a wound in the void, rimmed with symbols of mortal design. From beyond it comes a scent, thin, brittle, real space. The pressure builds until my form fractures. My vision collapses into fragments, moments, sensations, contradictions, cold and heat, pain and ecstasy, expansion and compression at once. And then, impact. I fall through the wound. The warp closes behind me like a mouth. I hit the world with a sound like thunder muffled by flesh. The ground buckles. The air ripples. Everything around me is solid again, too solid. Heavy, slow, stinking of metal and sweat. I am standing. Somehow. The first thing I see is firelight, flickering in a ring around me, casting shadows that dance and warp. The light comes from torches, crude, mortal flames, held by a circle of hooded figures. Their faces are hidden. Their voices roar from chanting. Their fear tastes wonderful. The air here is thin, almost dead. Every breath burns. The colors are too sharp. The silence too fragile. My presence disturbs it. I can feel reality itself bending beneath the weight of what I am. One of the mortals steps forward. His robe is soaked with sweat. His hands shaking as he lifts a rusted bell. He tries to speak, but the sound that comes out is only a cough. Blood spatters the floor. His eyes meet mine, wide, wet, pleading. Something moves through me, unbidden, not thought, instinct, a ripple of Father's will. I open my mouth, and the air itself recoils. The torches gutter, flaring green. The man falls to his knees, clutching his chest. I can hear his heartbeat stutter. Slow. Stop. His body folds in on itself. His skin darkening. His breath leaving in a single sigh that smells of rust and sweetness. The others scream. Not all of them flee. Some drop their torches and press their faces to the ground, whispering my name, not the one they gave me, but the true name Father knows. The sound of it shivers the air, spreading outward like a stain. Reality bends. I can feel the veil thinning around us. My vision expands. The walls of this place, a chapel, perhaps, stretch and twist. Mold blossoms across the stone. The air grows thick, humid, alive. Each breath the mortals take draws them closer to him. They do not understand that their prayer is infection. A window shatters. Wind rushes in, hot and foul. The torches die. Only my glow remains, a dull, throbbing luminescence that seeps from the cracks in my skin. Outside, I hear distant bells, not mortal ones. The bells of the garden, faint but clear, tolling in rhythm with my breath. I step forward. The floor groans. Every movement I make leaves a mark, wood swelling, metal tarnishing, life rewriting itself in my wake. The chanting falters. Silence stretches. I am here. I am in the world again. The air feels too small to contain me. I can sense the city beyond, its streets choked with smoke, its people crowded and sickly. I can feel the pulse of their lives, the fever in their lungs, the ache in their bones. All of them are seeds. All of them are waiting to bloom. I do not need to touch them. I only need to breathe. The mortals who remain stare at me, eyes wide in awe and horror. One of them whispers something, a prayer. Maybe. Another laughs. Then another. The laughter spreads, thin and brittle, breaking into sobs and screams. It is beginning. I lift my hand, heavy, trembling, radiant with decay, and reach toward the nearest wall. The stone softens beneath my touch, spreading outward in ripples, changing color, texture, smell, the pattern of my Father's joy. Somewhere above, I can hear thunder, or perhaps it is the sound of wings. The air grows darker. Something vast is answering my arrival. The city is awake. I can hear its heartbeat through the stone. Slow, fevered, uneven, the rhythm of something dying and not yet aware of its death. The air tastes of ash and salt. Somewhere, bells toll, not my bells, but mortal ones, ringing in desperation. I walk through streets of cracked concrete and flickering light, and every step leaves a print of moisture, a slow spreading dark that glistens before it dries. They see me, from doorways and broken windows. Faces peer out, pale, hollow-eyed, coughing. Some whisper prayers to saints who cannot hear them. Others simply stare, the mind already surrendering to what the body knows. I reach out my hand. The air hums. Each breath they take now carries me with it. My Father's gift is invisible, unstoppable, not a weapon, but a truth. Metal rusts, lamps fade, paint peels. The city exhales rot. The first screams begin, not from me, from them. Far away, where the sickness blooms faster. They do not die immediately. That is not the way of our work. They sweat, they tremble, they laugh and cry at once. Their lungs bloom inward, their blood thickens into warmth. The sound rises through the alleys, a chorus of fever and confusion. The sky darkens, not with storm, but with presence. Clouds form where there should be none, rolling with a slow, bruised pulse. Lightning flickers behind them in shapes too symmetrical to be natural. The world recognizes intrusion. I am not alone. From the horizon, I feel the press of other realms. The warp thins. Something greater walks there, perhaps a brother, perhaps a lord, a being whose laughter could split the mountains. The veil bends with anticipation. And then come the mortals who still believe in order. Armored figures, gleaming even beneath the soot. Their banners torn, their faces hidden behind mirrored masks. I hear their orders, crisp and certain, echoing between the buildings. The language means nothing to me. Only the tone matters. Defiance. They come in formation, weapons raised, their steps shaking the earth. The smell of sanctified oil and ozone stings the air. For a moment, the world around them seems clean. But cleanliness cannot last. Their light touches me, and the world recoils. They see me as I am, a shape formed of shadow and corrosion. A creature of warmth and ruin. They open fire. Sound disappears. The roar becomes a wall of vibration. White and absolute. Impacts strike through me. The air is torn apart. The stone behind me collapses into dust. For an instant, I almost remember pain. Then it passes, replaced by the dull, familiar weight of Father's blessing. Each blow that lands carries a fragment of their fear, and that fear becomes nourishment. I move forward, slowly, but inevitably. The ground softens beneath me, blooming with strange color. The smell of dust gives way to something sweeter. Their line falters. They fire again, and again, until their voices break. Some fall to their knees, praying through their helmets. One removes his mask, a human face, red and pale, and I see the sheen of sweat. The trembling lips. He whispers a word that might be mercy. I do not speak. The air answers for me. It shivers, hums, carries the resonance of decay. Their armor dims. Their banners sag. Their boots sink into the ground that no longer wishes to bear them. The world rejects them gently, the way flesh rejects a shard of glass. When they are gone, the silence that follows is enormous. The city breathes again, slower now, quieter. Buildings lean inward as if to listen. Somewhere above, clouds part for a moment, revealing a sliver of sky. Pale, fragile, impossibly clean. I feel the wound between worlds widening. The garden is close. I can smell it through the air. That sweetness of rotten sunlight. My father's laughter drifts on the wind. My task is nearly done. Everywhere around me, life is changing. Not dying, changing. The weeds that push through the cracks shimmer with new colors. The flies that gather in the air are thick and golden, their wings whispering hymns. Even the stones hum faintly, as if remembering warmth for the first time. This is what we are for. Not destruction, not conquest. Transformation. I look at my hands, heavy, trembling, luminous from within. Cracks spread through them, light seeping out. My body is beginning to fail. The tether to this world unraveling. I feel no fear, only return. Above me, a sound, a great chime. Deep and vast. The bells of home. The wind rises, carrying with it the scent of the garden. The damp heat. The laughter. The rustle of wings. I sink to my knees, feeling the edges of the world soften. The buildings blur, the colors melt, and through the fading haze, I see shapes moving, other beings, small and bright, dancing where mortals once stood. Nurglings, newly born, chasing each other through the ruins, laughing. Their joy is pure, their play eternal. I lower my head. The breath leaves me slowly. Not in death, but in release. The last thing I feel is warmth, the same warmth that began my becoming. It fills me, lifts me, dissolves me into the pulse of the garden that waits beyond the veil. Father's voice is the final sound. Well done, my counter. The tally grows. And then the city, the sky, the world, all of it, fades into that infinite laughter.